In today's episode, we'll be covering Chapter 7 of Xenosaga, Ep.III. After being captured by Utic, Shion is interrogated by Margulis, as well as Kevin and her father. After calling out her father for using her mother as a test subject, she comes to learn of his complex emotions regarding his involvement with Utic, which led him to begin leaking information to the Federation. He later comes to free her, and she begins to see another side to him that softens her feelings. The group then returns to rescue her, and together, they head to the old church where young Shion, Fabronia, and Virgil fall under attack by combat Realians. After Fabronia is killed, Virgil reappears as the Blue Testament and challenges Shion's beliefs, encouraging her to seek out and join Kevin. Fabronia's spirit then appears and helps Virgil work through his own trauma regarding this incident at the old church where she was killed, and together their spirits depart in peace. The group then heads back to Labyrinthos, where Shion's parents are in danger. Young Shion is then forced to watch as her parents are murdered in front of her eyes, and it is revealed that she, not Joachim Mizrahi, was responsible for opening the rift between the higher and lower domains, summoning the Gnosis. It's then revealed that the group did not time travel at all, but rather this entire scenario was a subconscious recreation of the events that happened on Miltia 15 years ago, to spur Shion into contacting the upper domain and summoning Abel's Ark. Kevin then appears and explains that Shion is suffering from the same illness that her mother had, and that she will soon die unless she comes with him. Jin and the group interfere, not allowing Kevin to take Shion, and with the help of Cosmos, they escape Shion's unconscious and return to the present time. All right, Kason, by popular demand, we're going to split this into 2 episodes instead of 1. I told everyone we're going to be doing chapters 7 through 9 as our final, not final episode. We're still going to do a panel discussion with Keith and TJ the Emperor and stuff as a final episode. But we're splitting what was going to be the final analysis on finishing up the story into 2. It's probably a good idea because while this is the third act of the game, it is kind of full of a lot of stuff to talk about.
Yeah, there's a ton. I got a lot of notes.
Probably a good idea to do that. Okay. So I'm thinking what we'll do is probably get definitely through chapter 7 and probably 8, because 8's content-wise, as far as the story goes, is not as chock full as 7's is, but that dungeon in Abel's Ark and was really long, and there's the Merkaba dungeon that was really long,
right?
And there was back on the Durandal, there was kind of a long dungeon. 3 really long dungeons in 8.
Yeah.
But I think we'll be able to get through that, and then we can kind of save 9.
Perfect.
For the final episode. I think we'll do all of our discussion about Shion's character arc and things like that that we've been kind of teasing in the past. Yeah. So that's how I'm thinking we'll do this.
Perfect.
So let's try to get through chapter 7 and 8 today.
Okay.
Chapter 7, I think we can break that down into kind of 3 major parts. The first part of chapter 7 is the rescue of Shion because she was captured by Utic, Ormus, whatever. I guess it's Utic technically. And is interrogated by Margulis and her father and Kevin. And then you got the group kind of going back in and trying to rescue her. That's kind of step 1. And then that ends up leading to part 2 of chapter 7, which I would say is back at the old church, where you get Virgil, kind of the resolution to his arc and Fabronia and the Realians, the combat Realians that went crazy, and some of the young Shion's major trauma with that. Then you get into the third part of chapter 7, which is you go back into Labyrinthos again with young Shion trying to rescue her mother. You find out that she was actually the one responsible for calling the Gnosis in the first place.
Yeah, that's right, yeah.
And then you realize this is not genuine time travel. This is a recreation of the memories in Shion's subconscious. It's another weird workaround for an Cephalon dive without the dive beds.
Exactly, yeah.
And all of this was orchestrated so that young Shion and older Shion together, their powers combined, could call Abel's arc from the upper domain down into this one.
The imaginary number domain, yeah.
So that it could then be used by those in the shadows who are interested in using it for their purposes. So that's kind of the three major sections of Chapter 7. I don't know. People have been asking us to do a little bit more of some of our reactions to the plot. So maybe we can start there. How did you feel overall about plot and the events, and what were your reactions to these revelations of Chapter 7?
Yeah, mostly with Kevin. I thought it was very interesting, especially as Kevin talks with Shion, younger Shion, right? You get this really interesting reaction between the two of them, and it carries throughout. But I did feel a little bit of, like, Kevin made a decision the last time he sees her, right? He kind of makes a decision, and we don't know what exactly he's thinking in his mind, but it's like that's the moment that he decided something very big and very important, right? And he's got like the flowers or something like that.
Yeah.
And that I liked the way that it was done, right? Kevin was just a total jerk, but then this young girl like softens his heart and kind of makes him, but then bad things happen, and you kind of don't know which way he's going to go with it, right? You're thinking, okay, because he started watering the flowers, and it's like, he's going to maybe soften up. But then all of a sudden this horrible death happens, and he's like, this can never happen again. And you don't know which way he's going to go with it. Now, we know he's the Red Testament.
His Nietzschean resolve was strengthened.
Yes, the will to power. I am resolved. But there's the potential there that Kevin that wants to water the plants and allow life to grow freely on its own. There's that potential still lives within him, right? Yeah. And that is interesting to me. So I had a positive reaction to all of this. I was actually very pleasantly surprised to find out this was not real time travel, because holy crap, man, they screwed up way too much stuff. That was unbelievable. You wouldn't even be living in a recognizable universe after that. Like, everything would be different. But I was pleasantly surprised to find that out. And then to the other part that you were talking about, there was another part. It was,
is it the Virgil Feb stuff?
Yeah, the Virgil Feb stuff. I love the way that resolves, specifically with Testament Virgil coming back down and then Febronia, right, kind of softening him a little bit. In the Encephalon dive, like in Shion's memories, Testament shows up and then gets kind of absolved of his burdens in a way that I felt was genuine, and I actually really liked it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I mentioned this, I think 2 episodes ago, but the Milshin conflict is not completely, but in many ways the real story of Xenosaga. It's really all about what happened here.
You don't realize that until the end of episode 3.
And so a lot of this stuff was it's a section that had been hyped up essentially by the games that came before it for so much that the truths revealed here were going to have to be big, and they were going to have to hit hard, and they were going to have to not only do that but make it all make sense.
Yeah. And make it worth it for you to roll, after you rolled your eyes, going back to Milsha for the 3rd time, being like, listen.
Yeah,
they had to do something big to make that.
To justify that.
Valuable, yeah. I feel like they did.
I would say that overall I felt like it was a very, very effective sort of like re-examination of the events that happened here.
Yeah.
I kind of liked the moments, say, like where they're running out of Labyrinthos after they've rescued Shion at the beginning when she was held for interrogation. They're escaping from that and going to the old church. Yes. And like Chaos and Junior, they dive out of the way of like some falling debris as Chaos's mech, who had been there 14 years ago as the opening scene of episode 2, are fighting their way through this operation.
So super,
super
cool.
And Junior yells up like, watch what you're doing up there when you're fighting. And Chaos next to him apologizes.
Yeah,
like, sorry, because it was his, it was him.
That's funny, man. That's funny.
So I thought that there were really nice moments like that sort of tied this moment into, we've been here before, we've seen these things. And this is like filling in the gaps of our knowledge about this event from what we've seen of it before. Again, and this is just going to be true of everything we've talked about, or that we will talk about today. I am so impressed with the level of polish that this game has.
Yeah.
It is by far, up to this point in the Xeno series' history, the one game that feels like it was finished. Like, it didn't feel like, hey, wish we'd had more time to bake this. It's a little raw in the middle. Or extremely raw in the middle in certain cases, particularly Xenogears.
It's like still cold.
Yeah. Like, it feels properly finished.
Right.
And is just very impressive technically. Like, it just looks really, really, really good. Yeah. And I think that the dungeons are super well designed. I think it's well paced. The music is very good,
especially towards the very end. There's a few songs that play there that were very fitting. I liked them a lot.
Yeah, and to the point where I would say something like Xenogears is one of the best RPGs on the PlayStation, with some very obvious caveats and asterisks and qualifiers applied to that.
Yeah.
If you can get over certain technical problems, some very obvious places where it's not smoothed over.
I think I can explain this a little bit. We just had the Olympics. I watched basically none of it, but one thing was introduced into my mind that I haven't thought of for 4 years, and that is the phrase degree of difficulty. Right?
Oh, sure.
And what was it? So I can't remember who it was. There was some analyst was saying that Simone Biles is so unbelievably good at what she does that she picked such a high degree of difficulty routine that she can fall like 5 times and still win gold.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that just like blew me away. Like, she is so far above everyone else.
Right.
The degree of difficulty that Xenogears was going for was so high that they executed enough, and the parts that were stumbled over don't completely negate the product as a whole as being a cut above the rest of the field, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Right? The degree of difficulty. And I think that's been Tetsuya Takahashi's, it's kind of been his Achilles heel, as well as the reason why people like his games. He picks a very high degree of difficulty, and it's so hard to execute on that. But I agree with you that Episode 3 has the best execution so far.
Oh, the
degree of difficulty is still high. So it's like, that's top honors right there.
It feels like the one game that we've played and covered as this, Xeno series we're doing, where I look at it and there's no sort of qualifier I have to put on it like that. No, this is just an excellent game through and through. So it's just very, very impressive to me. I mean, I feel almost constantly impressed. Anytime I'm going into a new dungeon or a new area, I'm stopping to look around, and I'm just like, wow, what amazing art direction.
Right.
What an amazing execution on the concept they're going for here. The interior of Abel's Ark, the Merkaba dungeon, these are both Chapter 8 things, but the labyrinthos, and I can't believe I haven't said this yet, because I've been trying to remember to say it every episode, and I forget every time. I love the way they do world map. It's so cool. It's so cool. That giant city of on Milsha there.
Milsha,
and you kind of go to the different points that you can then enter
really
into.
Cool.
It's
big.
Really cool.
I miss it because games don't really have that anymore.
I miss it so much. And this was the era, this PlayStation 2 era, was where they started pivoting away from that convention of world design and map design in RPGs of this kind. They started getting away from it. Famously, Final Fantasy with FF10. We're abandoning that whole idea, and we're going to go for something else in terms of maps. And so this has sort of a nice mix of the two. It's got like that sort of wide linear kind of like design to it, where it is just mostly kind of not narrow, but kind of narrow pathways, but there's lots of branches.
Oh, yes.
And there's treasure over here, and there's something you could miss if you don't interact with this thing and blow up the obstacle in the way and take this route. So it's kind of that wide linear thing that was sort of popular for RPGs on this platform.
Yeah.
But it's also in certain instances, back on 5th Jerusalem as well, the city, you can kind of walk around on it, and you get that sense of scale in that abstraction that I feel is just really effective and I really miss. And so I like that it did both of those things. And this isn't the only one to do that. I think Xenosaga Ep.II also did it. But this one does to a level that, again, just is elevated.
It's just better.
It's just executed better. It's so much more polished. Xenosaga Ep.III is without question one of the best RPGs on that platform, on the PlayStation 2.
High praise. That was a popular platform.
And, you know, I say that being somebody who's all in on the PS1 RPG era.
Me too.
Like, for me, that was like the best era of RPGs, JRPGs.
Yeah.
And I saw the PlayStation 2 as the first steps toward getting away from a lot of the conventions I liked about the PlayStation 1. That kind of led into that PS3 era, which a lot of people didn't like too much.
Yes.
And there wasn't a lot.
Yes.
That was great there.
Yeah.
And it has been trying to, I think the genre has been trying to define itself with a couple of different juggernauts there, whether you've got Atlas with their Persona games, and then you've got Square Enix with all their experimentations on Final Fantasy that they've been trying to find an identity for, and they're wildly swinging one way to another almost on each title. But I really liked the way that this game handled that transition while also sort of like keeping the conventions that made it the genre what it was. And it's just, I say all of this to really hammer home the point that I like this game a lot. Like a lot. Okay. I really do believe it's one of the best RPGs on the system. You know, addressing what some people have been saying about like, hey, can you talk a little bit more about the plot and your reactions to the plot? It's not that we're ignoring it. It's that I'm not taking those notes necessarily, because I do feel like this game stretches a little bit on the plot side of things. Yeah. Like what is a little bit too goofy and silly, just one step beyond that mark of like my tolerance level.
Yeah, a couple times. I've got a big note here, but it might not be till chapter 9.
Yeah, so that would be more of the reason why I'm probably not telling you like my genuine reactions to things all the time. Right. It's not like it's overall really hurting my experience with it. It's just that the story sometimes, like I guess I did kind of mention it last time we were together, like I just have these moments where just the absurdity of the whole thing hits me.
Yeah, that it hit me really hard in chapter 9.
And it has happened more than once in this game.
Yeah.
Where it's like this is just really, really weird. This story is way out there, man.
Yeah.
And so is Xenogears.
Yeah, yeah.
But I feel like and everyone has a different level of tolerance, but of like what does the step over, where is that for you in terms of where your ability to believe in this sort of starts to crumble away a little bit?
Suspension of disbelief.
Where that sort of starts falling apart. And again, I'm not saying this, went Olympic leaping over that line for me. I'm saying in a couple places, it just sort of like oversteps that just a bit. And I kind of like, man, that's just, I don't know how I feel about that. But I just know the game is really good. That's what I know. And despite that, I really, really, really like the sentiment. I always really like the sentiment, like the idea of what they're trying to get across and how it's adding thematically to it. That always nails it for me. And so that's kind of what I'm more leaning into as far as like my notes and my talking points, because that's where I feel like it's at its best. Hopefully that makes sense. But yeah, like the lengths to which Wilhelm and the Testaments are going here, and just the logic of it all, it just throws my brain for a loop.
Yeah.
We need the combined powers of young Shion girl 15 years ago at this point.
Yeah.
And the current day Shion in order to summon from the higher domain, another dimension, Abel's Ark. That's like really the goal here. But like, what? Like what? Yeah. Like how? This is all a construction in her subconscious. We're not looking at a real Shion. This is not genuine time travel. This is a I would think some kind of mental reconstruction, like an encephalon dive, a memory that is sort of being brought back to life for others to walk through and look at.
Right.
Not like a copy of the person. Now we have two of them to combine their powers.
There is a psychological kind of parallel here. There's something called it's like they call it parts therapy, something like that. Like there's a family of parts that live inside of you, basically, and they're all kind of sort of disconnected, but sort of connected in different ways. A decent way to understand this is the movie Inside Out.
Sure.
And basically, there's different parts inside of you, and a lot of psychologists are doing this now. It's become very popular.
How Pixar lately has been the best way of
That's right, because you brought up WALL-E.
making these complex philosophical, psychological concepts more understandable.
Pixar,
they do make great films.
No, they're a magical company. But the idea of this, the idea here is that there are suppressed parts of you that exist in your subconscious that are part of you and that have almost their own distinct voice, and that you can, in a way, actually talk to as though they are their own like individual entity, right?
Yeah.
And I think the idea here, at least some psychologists would then say, okay, can you find the childhood you? And the Xenogears actually did have some of this in it as well.
Oh, definitely.
Right? There is a suppressed child in you that you had to suppress when you became an adult, because that's not an acceptable version of you for, polite society. You've got to become an adult. You got to become a man or a woman. You can't keep being a child into your 30s, right? Or even 20s. Well, but that doesn't mean that it goes away. It's still there, right? And I almost feel like this encephalon dive was a way for Shion to find the inner child within her subconscious psyche.
I love that.
And that to allow that to speak. And of course, with Nietzsche, talking about the final stage in Thus Spake Zarathustra of becoming a child again, right? Of allowing the child, the creative capacities of the child, tamped down, what would the word be?
Untampered.
Well, unlike restrained, right? That is an instrument of pure creativity, right?
Yeah.
And that she needs to find that version of herself. It's not just her. It's the purely creative version of her that can only be found in the child that is in her subconscious mind. That's what she needs to access in order to call forth something like
Abel's Ark.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. That is a far better, because what you're saying here is there's obvious repression of childhood memories going on.
And
here.
I'm not even saying it's like bad repression. It's just natural.
Natural repression. Everybody does. But in this case, even on top of the natural repression, a traumatic incident
that blocks that childhood.
So
self.
there is a blockage happening psychologically within her that is keeping her from being able to fully contact the higher number domain.
Right.
And so they set up this little subconscious scenario in order for her to be forced to face those repressed memories and unlock the power.
Of the creative child.
If that's how they had explained it, I would have been like way into that, because it goes right into all of this stuff we talked about with Nietzsche and the child being the third stage of the development there.
Yeah.
And a lot of other cool ties into, therapy, like real life therapy that I've been a part of. I'm sure others have been too, about repressed memories and things like that. I think that would have worked. The way that they put it, I guess I could pull up the script, but I don't know, we'll play the freaking clip over the top, is that they needed the power of the two Shions combined.
Yes.
Almost like we need
two
two people, two separate individuals to combine their powers.
That is the way it sounded.
And that makes no sense, because that's not what's happening here.
It doesn't make sense, except the way that this game treats the collective unconscious. And I don't know. I wonder if, in a way, they are referring to Shion as Shion's younger self
as a separate person, but in this more like abstract concept of being a separate person. See, that's what I mean. Like
how we say you're a different person as you grow up. But I don't know that quite answers your concern.
Sure.
I don't know that that's what the developers had in mind.
What I'm getting at here is, and I've been touching on this more than once throughout the series, the plot of Xenosaga. I'm not talking about themes, because I saw someone saying, oh, you could summarize the themes and make it more simple. I'm not talking about themes. The themes are the complex part of Xenosaga.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the plot itself is not actually that complex. They just make it sound that way in how they choose to explain itself.
Yeah.
How they choose to explain themselves, how the game chooses to explain its own plot.
Right.
And it just doesn't need to be that convoluted. There's a sense of being complex, but like comprehensible, that you go like, wow, wait, let me think about that for a minute and work about, okay, yeah, the logic lines up. That's that kind of complex I really, really like, where you come to the end of it and you go, I'm not really sure I understand that. Let me go back through that again. And like, as you start thinking about it, okay, that connects, okay, that connects, okay, that connects. It all works within its own rules that it established, and you go and you can figure it out. And it feels logical.
Right.
And I feel like the way Xenosaga, the characters and the dialogue go about explaining its own plot, for some, and I'll acknowledge this, for them, they like its either wordiness or vagueness, because it opens up the opportunity for more than one interpretation. And I think I've said this before in other games we've covered. I like a story to be open for interpretation in its thematic content, where it's like, okay, let's have a discussion on how we interpreted what they're trying to say about this larger idea that they're using as an inspiration or social commentary, whatever. What I don't like is vagueness and convolution in like the freaking story and the
actual
plot.
Order of events.
What does it what actually happened logically that caused event A and event B to happen?
Right.
Like when you're getting that
less
to be confusing, like that's the part I don't like. I don't like to be confused about how things happen in the game world. I like to be challenged and given the opportunity to explore interpretations on, okay, what does this imply about the ideas being explored?
Right.
That's the conversation I like to have. Not, did they actually duplicate a Shion so that they could have two powers, or is this some abstract way of just, we're not really saying two people. It's more like you're saying, you were a different person at an earlier point.
Yeah.
I don't like being confused about that.
Yeah. I agree. I can't agree more, actually.
I don't like that. That's a distraction that keeps me from getting at the idea being presented and being able to go, okay, let's see how that's being worked into here. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, I'll repeat, this does not bother me enough to keep me from saying it's still one of the best games I've played on this platform, period. It's still really, really good. But to talk about the ideas that were presented here, there were some really, really good scenes that I kind of wanted to go over some dialogue here. I guess in particular, the biggest takeaway I had from kind of the first part of Chapter 7 I was talking about is they try to give you some context into Suo Uzuki a little bit.
Yeah, Suo, her father.
He's not this monster that they've sort of led you to think and led Shion to think that he was.
In fact, most of the monsters are not actually the monsters that you've been led to think of. Even Wilhelm, and anyways.
Yeah.
Even a lot of them in the end, it's like, well, even the Gnosis, that basically there are no monsters.
Yeah. And I've always liked that about the Xeno series in particular. They do a really good job of making their villains at least have understandable motivations.
Yeah.
And they're coming from a place where you feel like you can understand them even if you disagree with obviously the lengths they're willing to go to achieve their ends or whatnot. But anyway, her father, it is shown here, was actually leaking information to the Federation. He's a Federation spy.
Yeah, he was.
So he wasn't just a guy who worked for UTIC.
And Shion almost blew his cover.
Almost.
She's just like, getting all in his face. And it's so funny because she looks a lot like her younger self.
Yes.
And he's just like, I don't know where you came from. Who are you? Who are you? And it's like, look at her, man.
I said the same thing about Kevin. Like, how can you not know that that's Kevin?
Yeah, that's right. I don't know. It's the way that the art style, I don't know. Maybe there's less nuance in how people look here.
This is, of course, overcome when you learn these aren't real human beings anyways. This is all like a subconscious recreation of the event. These aren't real people.
Yes.
This is an actual genuine time travel.
Which I actually really liked at the end because it took so long for the Realians to like kill her mother. Then she was right there in the next room. And it's like, oh no, we got to go save mom. And then like a long scene plays out and then she shows up. I'm like, you were right there. Why did it take so long? At least in part because she can't change it. As much as she is trying to like, oh, I'm here to change things. Whenever she arrives at the destination, I'm too late.
That wasn't
can't change
that
it.
wasn't
But
the
that's
goal
the point
of this
to change things
of this unconscious simulation.
Right.
It was to make her face what happened there.
No matter what happened, she couldn't prevent it. No matter what, and that was always going to be the case.
I liked that. The key moment, as far as the villain's purpose of recreating this, was to get her in the room when the traumatic thing happened, so that she would reawaken and call forth Abel's arc. That was like the whole point of this whole thing. So she wouldn't have been able to change anything no matter what she did, because they wouldn't have let that happen.
I liked it. I liked it a lot because back when I thought it was time travel, I was like, this is ridiculous. We should be changing things.
Yeah.
And things continue happening as usual. And that's why.
Yeah.
But
so
yes,
he and Jin are working together.
Yeah,
so I kind of like this too, because it answered a question I think we've had all the way back since episode 2 about Jin. He talks about, having this unforgivable like sin he has to atone for, right? You get this very brief scene where we know it's Jin from the past because he's wearing a different uniform. He's wearing his like uniform from the time, and he's got his old mech there, not the ES unit he uses now. And he's like looking at Miltia in the distance, the city, Labyrinthos out there, right when the descent operation, the Federation descent operation begins. And he's like, oh man, like, going to have to retreat for the time being.
Right.
So I think what happened here was he and his dad are working together to leak information to the Federation. They are acting together as spies. They are comrades in this or whatever. He has this extremely important data about Ormus, a group almost nobody even knows about. Right. I loved this because I'd almost forgotten it. When Margulis is interrogating Shion, and she like name drops Ormus out of nowhere.
Yeah,
he
like,
was like, how do you know that name?
Yep.
Like he gets like freaking pissed and really concerned about how she could actually know about the name of that organization. Yeah. And so I was like, oh yeah, like Ormus was not a thing we knew about for like a really long time.
Right, yeah.
Nobody's supposed to know about it. That's part of what was on that disc that had been stolen by Jin. Not only that, but that like how Vector was involved and like all of this other stuff that led back to Wilhelm being the mastermind behind it. He's not mentioned in that data, but it's all evidence that would lead back to him as being the mastermind behind this. So he's got this, and he's like, oh crap, the descent operation's happening. I better pull back. I can't risk losing this. I've got to get this to Helmer and to the Federation or whatever, right? So I think what he feels really bad about is the fact that he did not arrive to help his family. Not just his mother and father who were murdered by those Realians, but also his sister who was traumatized by it and who he could never have a real good relationship with afterwards because of.
And he was trying to protect the world instead of his local family. Yeah.
And so he's torn apart by that decision that he made there. I think that's what he had been referring to as this sin that he needed to atone for. And in atoning for that, how do I make this up to Shion? The fact that I wasn't there. I was very capable, and I wasn't there to help. I put a priority or a greater urgency on keeping this data safe than on helping my own family. So I felt like that was a really nice sort of tie on the bow to that question that we had from earlier. Because you see Suo call up calling Jin, trying to be like, Jin, like, if you get this, like, you need to get here, like, right away. Like, please drop everything and come right now. And, like, it's too late at that point, right?
Yeah.
So, like, that was pretty nice, the way that they gave that context to Jin a little bit, and, like, the guilt that he would feel due to that. Especially when you see the scene play out as far as, like, what Shion had to see.
Yeah.
It reminded me a little bit, and I don't know which came first. She's under the bed, right, when her mother's getting, like, stabbed.
You're talking about Kill Bill?
Just Kill Bill, right? Just like straight out of Kill Bill.
Straight up.
Did Kill Bill come first? I think it did.
Kill Bill was like 2001, maybe? It was before Episode 3, for sure.
Yeah.
Kill Bill 2 was probably out before Episode 3.
Almost this exact same scene.
Except
plays out in Kill Bill.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, it's basically the exact.
I remember being, like, super impacted by that in Kill Bill, though. Like, as far as media I watched as a kid or in, like, high school age or wherever we would have been, I guess I would have been in high school by then.
Yeah.
Feeling, like, pretty gutted by watching something that violent and traumatic. It was kind of disturbing to watch at the time for me. I'm talking about Kill Bill at the moment because I remember the scenes, like, the swords are, like, going through and the blood comes, like, through the mattress and, like, drops onto her face.
And she can't make a sound, right?
Yeah, and she's, like, trying to be quiet and hide there, right, as, like, her freaking parents are, like, dying. So it's essentially the exact same thing happens here. Shion's underneath and all these realities, like, stabbing. This is something that if you had played the North American version of the game would have been really weird. When Shion's holding the blood from her mother in her hands, and she's like, put it back in. We need to put it back in. She's going to die if I don't put it back in. They've edited out almost all the blood in the North American version. I remember
that.
Which is crazy. Because she's holding literally nothing in her hands. There was supposed
to be blood. I did assume that she was talking about blood.
Yeah.
And that it was just some quirky, funny quality of the CG, that it's like, because, like, they're drinking, there's never any water in their cups. Right. I'm like, oh, okay, whatever.
No, in the Japanese version, she's holding blood in her hands.
Wow, okay.
And is like... And then ends up dropping and it sort of sorks onto the floor. There's actually a lot of blood in the Japanese version.
Didn't see any.
When the Durandal gets attacked later in Chapter 8,
oh yeah, that was pretty brutal.
In there's freaking blood spatter just literally everywhere, all over the walls. Like, there's just blood everywhere, dude. And all of that is censored for the North American version. And even stuff we'll get into next episode with Chapter 9 at the end with Jin. Like, a lot of blood edited for that.
Dang, man. Dang.
But anyways, no, it's dark and it's really effective. I think this game is excellent with its use of cinematography and music and everything like that, like we've been talking about. Like, the impact, I feel like the all of the right, like, emotion is there in these scenes.
Yeah, I agree.
And I really felt for Jin and Shion. I actually do want to. We're probably going to save our full Shion character analysis for next time.
Okay, yeah. That's where, that makes sense.
Thing happens I've been talking about. But there was a specific scene in what we're talking about today between Jin and Shion that I want to really go into more depth on, because I felt like I really started getting it from both of their perspectives.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, let's see. I feel like I've gotten a little bit ahead of myself. Let's go back to
Suo.
Suo, yes.
Well, just at the very least, she learns he's not so bad. He's actually going to help her escape and all of this stuff.
That was the result at the end of this, because Jin comes in and fights Pellegrini. You learn that they had a relationship, and then she ended up going to Margulis, and this obviously would have hurt him. That's like his rival or whatever, right? So they have, like, their dialogue where she paints him as being a manipulative person, and I don't know the details of their relationship, so it's hard to see that.
No, we don't.
But at the same time, even if a person isn't manipulative, the person who has grievances can sometimes just try to paint them that way.
Oh, yeah.
As a way to make them feel guilty or whatever.
We see that very much so at the end of this game. Well, specifically within this game, at the end of this game with Shion, how she feels like everyone's abandoned her. And it's like, well, maybe they did or didn't, but it doesn't matter because that's the way she sees it.
Yes, the way that the person sees it in their reality, their perceived reality is what matters to them. And so in Pellegri's perceived reality, Jin was manipulative to her.
And that is her, but she's still, and this is funny, her mech has one wing on it.
Oh, yeah.
And that she is a one-winged angel without a pair, and she's flying alone, right? And that you see her weakness very much on display there. And we talked about this in Xenogears. We should probably talk about it again now.
Yeah, I was about to bring that up. I was like, this was a key symbol in Xenogears.
Huge in Xenogears.
And so we've talked about it before, but I think we should at least maybe briefly touch on what that symbol means.
So the one wing is essentially useless. You can't do anything with just one wing. And a huge part of the symbolism of Xenogears, and I don't think this spoils anything. This is just this is just some thematic material with which they made the game. And also this harkens back to the director himself and his relationship with his wife. That Takahashi and Soraya but I can't remember her other name. Kaori Tanaka. Yeah. That they kind of feel like they filled like an empty space in each other's lives, and they have this this connection that they were able to talk about things that most people don't know about this stuff, and like, oh, this is great, and like they connected over like Jung and all this kind of stuff, Nietzsche, and basically this theme kind of then works its way into Xenogears of like the anima and the animus, and the fact that, the male and the female, the masculine and the feminine, that we need each other, and that there is an incompleteness without, the fulfillment from the opposite, right? This is a hermetic idea. And that in order to really be able to fly, to achieve your true potential, you can't do it alone. You have to pair with somebody who has the opposite qualities of you.
The opposite
and
energy,
that they then have, energy, but neither of you're both missing something without the other. And then when you then can, join together, then by, it's like a three-legged race, I guess, by them flapping their wing and you flapping your one wing, suddenly you can fly, right? And that's the idea here. It was a big part of Xenogears. It's pretty absent here in Xenosaga, except to say that they're referencing it here with Pellegri, that she acts very tough and, you jerk, I don't need you. And then, but really she's torn up and she's missing something and she can't function properly because she only has one wing.
Something she's definitely not getting from Margulis, because Margulis is absolutely married to the faith.
Yeah.
Certainly not to her.
Right.
And so she's looking for a probably genuine relationship with a man who's just not capable, not interested in giving back or being that second wing in the pair the way that Jin probably would have been willing to, depending on whatever the complications of their relationship were, which they don't get into.
But Margulis is very powerful, so there's always that a little.
But I'm glad you caught on to that because that is a good catch, that it shows what that character, Pellegri, is missing. Yeah. And it's evident.
You kind of see it towards the end as well. We'll get into her
a little bit later.
Ending a little bit later.
So they Suo tries to kind of defend himself a little bit here and is like, hey, it's none of your business. This is like a family thing.
Oh, hold on. The Jian bird is a Chinese myth.
Who cares if that was the intention?
Well, we should bring it up.
That's freaking cool anyways.
I just don't know anything about it. Like, what is this?
I don't know.
So there's two one-winged birds in ancient Chinese mythology. The Jian bird.
That's crazy.
We should pull something up about this.
Well, the Jian bird is super fun. Apparently, it is a bird in ancient Chinese mythology. And it is a mythical one-eyed bird with one wing. So it has one eye and one wing. A pair of such birds were dependent on each other, and that they were born at the same time. They were they were born made for each other, and that they would find each other. And then a pair of these birds were dependent on each other, inseparable, hence representing husband and wife.
Suo basically paints this out to where it's like, I didn't have a choice. I didn't know how to feel about that at first.
People say that.
Because it's like, yes, you did.
Right.
But at the same time, I think maybe what he's referring to when he says that is, because what we learn in this chapter is that Shion and her mother both have this same illness, this same disease.
Yeah.
That is now killing Shion. This is what's causing the episodes of her blackouts.
Yeah, her brain has, a disease.
And they both carry with them this innate ability to contact Udu or the upper domain.
Yeah.
They can sort of link with that. But in doing so, it actually kills them, right?
It's like radiation or something.
Something like that.
Yeah.
The contact with these waves from the upper dimension actually kills them. But they have this innate ability to do it. As far as I understand, they are descendants of the, what are they called? The immigration fleet.
Oh, right. Yes.
So they are part of that sort of lineage of people that have this connection to the Zohar and to
Earth, right?
To
Going
Earth,
back.
Lost Jerusalem, and the upper domain.
Yeah.
And so this ties into the 13th door with the Mary and kin story, right? Because these are the descendants of Mary.
Right.
The whole Rennes le Chateau.
But this is Mary Magdalene, right?
But
it's a different.
But through Jesus and that pairing, it is actually Mary.
Oh, fair enough.
Bloodline as
Grandchildren.
well.
Yeah, fair enough. Yes.
So
but I don't know why you would.
So the Virgin Mary's bloodline is carried forward by Mary Magdalene. According to the Rennes le Chateau, Jesus and Mary were together, and their children are the real. What do you call it? The
Holy Grail.
Holy Grail.
The container, the vessel that contains the blood of Christ.
Right.
Is the genetic.
That's the myth we're playing off of here. And so, anyways, these are descendants, and they have this connection to the upper domain and to Udu. They have this innate ability to do this. And because they did, all of the people who were being experimented on here in Labyrinthos were people who had that ability. So, Suo, I think what he is saying here is that in order to rescue or to help Shion, he had no choice but to carry out these experiments on people like his wife and others who were in there. But that everything he did it for her.
Right.
Is kind of what he gets at. And Kevin ends up saying a similar thing later, and that's definitely not true. That's a manipulation going on there.
Totally.
But I think we're meant to take away that Suo is being genuine when he says this.
Yes.
Like, he wanted
Shion
to save his daughter.
Certainly believes so.
And that's kind of what I was going to get at, is that she was so angry at him and outwardly just accuses him of these horrible things. But by the end of that sequence, when Jin comes in after fighting Pellegrini, she excitedly talks to Jin. Oh, he's going to save mom. Like, he's not bad after all.
Right.
Like, he's actually good. Like, you could see the genuine sort of relief and happiness in her as she sort of accepted.
This is what she wanted to believe the whole time.
Yeah, accepted this explanation that he was giving to her. And so Suo at this point, well, we do see several scenes where he's sort of getting fed up. Like, he has some scenes with Kevin where he's like, what are you doing? You cannot use these Asura 27 series realians like this. They are completely unstable. They do not distinguish between friend and foe on the battlefield. They will indiscriminately kill. You cannot employ this. And Kevin's just like, so what? Like, that's the whole point. Like,
right.
It doesn't matter what sacrifices we have to make as far as our ideals are reached here. We employ them. Sure, a lot of innocent people will be sacrificed, but in the end, we'll hold off the Federation fleet and, achieve our goals of activating the Zohar and whatnot. Sellers ends up having the same justification. Yes, we'll have to sacrifice all of these innocent people, but for this end of, activating the Zohar. These things must, to achieve greatness, you must make sacrifices along the way.
To this day, there are still, it is a big part of how the world works.
Yeah.
And even through war and all different ways, it's there is always an acceptable number of innocent people dying in all calculations and usually it's,
whatever is perceived as
if we're in charge, then more people will benefit.
I remember it was in episode 2 that Shion got upset about that sentiment. Who was she talking to? I'm trying to remember. She was like, acceptable loss. I hate that term.
Yes,
I'm trying to
acceptable
remember
losses. That's
who was she
it.
talking?
Yeah, yeah.
I think she was talking to. Was she talking to Les Grossman when she said that?
Les Grossman.
I think she was talking to Les Grossman.
It totally was. Yeah. Yeah. Classic.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure she threw that line at Les
But
Grossman.
here's an example of this though. We know for a fact that I don't know how many it is. Something like 100 people die in car accidents every day.
In this nationally or
in America. Yeah. In America, it's probably 1,000 in the world. But in America, 100 people die in car accidents. We can stop that and put the speed limit at like 12 and seriously enforce speed, like hire a billion cops, put the speed limit at 12.
Or
and
you could
boom, like those 100 people no longer die.
Private use of automobiles and have just public transportation.
Sure,
or
yes,
something
stuff like that.
Yeah.
But is there a negative to that then? Okay, well, stores don't get stocked with food as often, and it takes a long time for delivery and transportation of things and
People
medicine
have to deal with all the
and all that
crowds
stuff.
Of riding on buses. And
Yeah,
trains.
so yeah, and then that can be dangerous because people getting too close together, like it's just I can't remember what it is. I talked about in Itaewon in Seoul in Korea, there was that stampede event because the amount of people per square meter just exceeded the limit and like 100 people died.
People started panicking.
Anyways, it just like it is difficult to deal with to navigate large crowds.
That
Anyways,
was
the
for
idea
an event,
being,
right? That was for some kind of concert or
it was like
protest
Halloween
or something like
Halloween.
that.
Yeah. Halloween in Itaewon is freaking wild, and it was extra wild that year apparently
And
because
so
there were way more people than they thought.
They exceeded the number, like you said, people per square foot or whatever.
Per square meter, yeah.
Per
But
square
it's
meter.
4 or 6 per square meter, yeah.
And so like it just people got panicked. And
Well,
just
what
freaked
happens
out.
there is the oxygen saturation of the air starts to go down because
yes.
everyone's so close, and then all of a sudden people start to feel that they just can't breathe, and panic begins from the middle and kind of spreads out, and and you can't stop it because the people who can breathe just fine are like, why is everyone running? And so they start running too, and it just ends up being a tragedy. But the idea is that 100 deaths in order to maintain America's highway system is an acceptable number of deaths. And everyone alive in America basically agrees with that and is like, yeah, in order to make sure that transportation and medicine, 100 people dying a day, we're okay with that number. Like you may not technically have voted for it, like you might not
or have
know,
even considered
you
that
might not know, but
consciously
there is tacit approval of what has already been.
We do understand that there are people dying on the freeway every day.
We all know
accidents,
and we've determined. Well, I'd rather get places faster, so it is an acceptable number of deaths, and everyone like. There will be people in the comments like, oh, I don't think it's acceptable. Okay, fine. Well, but you do it. Like, do you drive more than 12 miles an hour? That you're tacitly agreeing to a system that does result in this many deaths, whether you really care about it or not. And even Shion, if she were able to really closely examine what she does in life, she would see that her tacit approval of all kinds of things that result in some number of casualties down the line means that she just doesn't want to think about it is the problem. But I don't say it though. Don't say the words. I do it. I'm going to participate in it, but don't say it because that hurts my soul.
Yeah.
Right. And I feel like maybe that's a little bit more Shion's speed there.
Sure. Yeah. So anyway, Suo is becoming fed up with I guess the lengths that these UTIC people are going to. On top of the fact he's a Federation agent, anyways.
Yeah.
But he, to whatever degree, he was, like you said, tacitly participating in the UTIC experiments because he is he's leaking information to the Federation, but he is still doing the experiments on his own wife and things like that. So it's not like he's just a spy pretending to be there. He is actually
actively
involved,
participating.
but he's just also leaking information to the Federation because he feels bad about it.
Well, that's usually how it has to be. Like in order to, if you're a spy going somewhere, you've got to prove that you're on the right team.
Sure.
And part of that is you got to take part in it, right?
This was the whole...
That way we all can blackmail each other.
This was the whole concept behind Splinter Cell Double Agent.
Oh, yeah.
Which I never played. But
I never did. I heard it was
the
good,
whole
though.
time you were supposed to be proving to this organization that you're with them. And so they put you in these situations where they tell you to execute some random person, and you have to choose to do that or not in the pursuit of proving your loyalty to this organization.
And
you're
is it
actually
worth it
infiltrating.
in the end? Yeah.
I should try to replay that game. I never finished it, but I should Anyway, another time. Okay. So anyway, he convinces her that he's genuine, that he cares about her
Yep.
and whatnot. But he tells her, hey, go take care of my daughter, Shion. She went to the old church. So the group gets together. They're like, oh, crap, the descent operation's happening. Let's get out of here and go get Shion. While they're making their way there, the old church gets attacked by a group of combat Realians who, Febroni is there having a conversation with Virgil, who's still injured, and they like break into the church at that moment. And this is where this whole episode went down, where Shion witnessed these Realians just like jumping on and like biting. I thought originally it was supposed to be they like ate her, but her body's still pretty much.
Once again, I just assume.
Fine.
Is it covered in blood though? It wasn't for me.
Because when the whole thing is over,
I just assumed
Virgil kind of lays her on the altar, and it's not like she's got like pieces of her body missing or anything.
Right, but it's CG.
They are
like it might have been hard
biting her. I think.
I thought so.
I'm pretty sure they're consuming her.
Yeah,
that's at least what was shown or insinuated to have happened when they kind of hinted at this scene in episode 1. Anyway, she has to watch this whole thing happen. It's a traumatic thing. So on the back of that, then she goes and watches her freaking mother and father murdered in front of her eyes after
that's
this.
rough.
But anyway, this scene I think is more notable because of the Febronia and Virgil conversations here.
Yeah.
So I wanted to go through a little bit of this. So she says, okay, back. This is the Blue Testament Virgil. I don't want that one. I want the past Virgil and Febronia conversation. Here we go. She says, "Are your wounds healed?" Says, "Yeah, it sure is noisy outside. Did something happen?" This is in the middle of the descent operation, so he's like, it sounds like a war zone out there. Right. I mean, this church, if we're to take the world map as like a reference, it would be like several miles outside of the city, right? Let's see. It looks like there's a battle going on, she says. He says, "A battle? The Federation descent operation. You aren't going to fight?" So remember, she's a Realian created by Utic. So he is part of the Federation. He's a Federation soldier. She's a Utic Realian. So it's like they're supposed to be enemies or
Romeo
whatever.
And Juliet.
But she's like, I have no enemies, right?
Right.
Is her attitude.
Yeah.
I'm not made for combat, she says, but if necessary. Virgil says, "I've seen Realians fight numerous times. I was taught that that's what they do, that they'll even kill children without any hesitation." And Febronia says, "Unless instructed, Realians won't kill people or each other. It's you humans who issue that order." And he says, "So it's all the work of human beings, huh? You feel different than the others somehow, different than normal Realians." Febronia says, "It's because I'm half human." Half human? And then young Shion comes in. "Oh gosh, crazy stuff's happening." And then the combat Realians come in, they bust in the door. And he's sort of held down like by them, and he's sort of reaching out to her, like watching her get torn apart by these Realians, right? And then our present party, Shion and group, come in the middle of this and kind of help out. And I thought it was funny because, like, at least the way the scene is blocked, you have like Jin and Ziggy, like the two strongest dudes in this party. They go to the door. There's less, there are less enemies in the front. Let's escape out this way. And they all run and leave Shion behind to like put Virgil over her shoulder and carry out.
That's right.
Like, what are you guys doing, dude? Get over there and especially Ziggy, pick this dude up and sling him over and run out of there.
That is part of what I am referring to when I say that no matter what happens, the thing that happened in the memory still happens.
Yeah, it's just going to happen.
And it's like, oh no, they're doing things, but whatever the reason, whatever the mechanism is, it leads to, oh, they can't save Virgil.
Yeah.
Now you're right. Ziggy could easily have saved Virgil, but
they're not supposed to.
Exactly.
This was really interesting because you have this action where you almost see this total change in the character. I talked a couple episodes ago about I didn't really like Virgil. This is almost like his redemption moment.
It is.
Because he gets to the door and he's like, she says something to him like, oh, you don't give up that easily. That's not like you. He's like, you're right. And he throws her out the door and then closes the door
to protect her.
Sacrifice himself to protect them. And then he says something like, it's funny, even after all this, I never got your name, to older Shion, right? Not realizing that this is the same as the little girl. He also gets young Shion to come to her senses. Hey, can you run? Because she's sitting there like freaked out and traumatized, right? He like snaps her out of it. Can you run? Right. Yes. Okay. Here's a key card to get into the place where like you need to go. Right. Go there right now. Like, I can't help you. I'm injured and I like can barely walk myself. Like, get out of here. So he was like instrumental to like saving young Shion in that moment, in the past. So that was kind of cool. But then you get this huge juxtaposition where you get this like heroic changed Virgil who like throws her out and then closes the door. And then like he goes and like detonates a bomb that like blows up the church.
That's right.
And then right on the back of that, Blue Testament Virgil comes in, who is has totally reverted.
Yes, it's
at this point,
but it's to a higher degree. So if you can imagine, if we're going to graph it out here, which way is left to right? So here is original Virgil. He's just in this point, right? But he like when he was born, but he's taught to like hate realians. So he like fall. He has this like fall, but then he has this redemption with Feb because she like teaches him to be good again. But then he has this deeper fall, like way down here, and then he has like a higher redemption like afterwards. Yeah, it's like you can almost plot it as like this extremely volatile situation, and volatile is actually the exact word I would use to describe Virgil. Yeah, very much so. He acts like, oh, I've got it all figured out. I'm just a cold person. But it's like, no, dude, you are highly emotional. And you have a very volatile like personality situation. And you would like to not be, I suppose. But in pretending that you aren't, you're actually undergoing these bigger swings.
And, this is kind of a tropey thing that they do.
I agree, but I liked it.
I thought it was good. I do too. It's kind of where I'm going with this.
Good.
All of the villains, or at least the testaments, or at least a lot of them, I guess it's not true for Albedo, but they basically justify what they're doing by pointing at the protagonists and saying, see, you did the same thing.
Yes,
you're just like me.
Yeah.
I guess Sellers said this to Junior at a certain part in Chapter 8, I think.
Yep.
See, we're just the same. Look how many people you sacrificed. You sacrificed all your comrades to like save yourself or whatever.
You approve of the American highway
like
system.
Me, you just
you just approve of cars. You're just like me.
You just haven't. You're just in denial of the fact that you think the same thing I do.
Right.
So they kind of have a conversation like this, right? So Shion, I think I need to go further a little bit here. Testament Virgil, here we go. Come on, Virgil, don't quit on me. We both know that's not like you. Says, not like me. You got that right. Throws her out. No, you get like the bomb explodes. And then he says, how moving. This is so touching. Virgil, they did a number on her, huh? He's saying, looking down at like the corpse of Fabronia here. Now she's just an object. Oh, wait, she already was just a tool to begin with. So this is like particularly cruel because she had saved his life twice. She had given her like organ to save his life. And then she like sacrificed her body to like try to bring attention so they could all like tear her apart while he got Shion out. And then he's coming and looking at the aftermath of this and being like, oh, she was just she's just a robot. She's just a tool. She meant nothing to me. How can you say that, Shion says? She was trying to protect you. She decided to do that on her own and then died of her own. Why should I be responsible? What I guess what we should get at here is like the whole key of this scene is everything he's saying here is like what he wants to believe. It's like what he's choosing to try his hardest to believe in order to avoid pain.
Yes,
right? Like
totally,
he's trying to avoid facing the pain and the trauma of what happened here.
Yeah.
And Feb is going to basically turn this all on its head in the scene and like tell him what he really thinks, or like force him to come face to face with what he really thinks. So he's saying all this. What about you? You love to go on about Realian rights, but you gave me that code. What made you change your mind? I think he's referring here to the Woglinde in episode 1. You gave me the code so that he could like kill a bunch of Realians because they were going crazy on the Woglinde. I'm pretty sure that's what he's referring to there.
Right.
I wanted to save you, she says. That's why I did that. So you decided to off the Realians. So you decided a human being's life was more important than a Realian's life. See, they're doing that thing where they try to find like holes in your philosophy. See, we think the same thing. We both don't care about Realians. We both see them as tools. You just pretend that you don't until you're pushed. And at the moment where does it come between a Realian life and my life, you chose mine because I'm a human being. No, it's not like that, she says. What are you embarrassed about? That's basic human instinct. Humans are driven by impulse to destroy. Destruction serves as a way to feel out others and confirm our own existence. Then you try to find atonement to comfort yourself after you're unable to deny your instincts. I tried to live exactly like that. That feels a little Nietzschean to me. I'm not sure like I can articulate exactly how, but there was an element of part of what he criticized about religion was this denial of some of the basic human instincts.
Oh yeah, because he didn't like asceticism,
right?
Where you like deny yourself bodily pleasures and all that stuff, like the monks and
trying to set those things as some kind of sin to be purged or denied of the person. He was kind of against that, and so this line reads a little bit kind of like that to me. Like this is what are you embarrassed about? This is human instinct, and then you try to find atonement to comfort yourself after you're unable to deny your instincts. I tried to live exactly like that, and you've lived for that same purpose. You disassembled Realians and dreamed of giving consciousness to inorganic matter, comforting yourself for the hatred towards your father and the anger over your mother's death. You're doing things you don't want to do. This is exactly, and we didn't cover this. I covered this in the episode I did last, the Beach of Nothingness. Joachim Mizrahi says to her, don't do anything you don't want to do. At the end of that. And all of that was to be able to basically awaken Cosmos. He was suggesting that in not doing, let me read it again, sorry. You're doing things you don't want to. Joachim Mizrahi was saying, don't do anything you don't want to. This is the way in which you will contact and awaken, like truly awaken Cosmos. Just to escape your own feelings of guilt. You're a hypocrite. The word doesn't even begin to describe you. Be more true to yourself. What makes you think you understand me? Oh, I understand you because you and I are the same kind of person. What is it that drives you? That's right, revenge. Only revenge drives you and me, and that's the truth. Ideals crumble easily. Hope is like mist before the morning sunrise of reality. That's exactly how I was. But then I learned nothing will change. There's a limit to will, the limit of this world in which everything is closed. Yes, that is what all of us came to understand. All of us testaments, I think, is what he's saying, right?
Yeah.
I just want to emphasize again how they are making all the villains embrace Nietzschean concepts.
Yes. This is what
They're
I've
painting
noticed for a
this
while.
out as if like the Nietzschean beliefs are like the villainous beliefs.
The villainous beliefs.
I don't know how I feel about that.
I don't either, because you're titling your game, like how many people title the media, movie, show, whatever it is, after like the villain or the bad philosophy. And it's like the negative stuff. And like, I don't know. That's fascinating. I've been wondering about that since episode 1 too, with the will to power. Now we're seeing it elsewhere, beyond good and evil, but beyond good and evil is bad. But the will to power, is destructive. But the wheel of Zarathustra is bad. You got to break it. Like, oh, okay. But But why are you naming your game after it? I mean, I suppose, I don't know, there's like maybe some other media does this too, but you would think that if they are going, I don't get the feeling that Takahashi despises Nietzsche or dislikes Nietzsche. Just in interviews. And
I don't get
when
that
he explains
sense
the
either.
game, he's like, oh, we're exploring Nietzschean ideas. But in the game, he's like refuting heavily all of Nietzsche's ideas.
Yeah.
And he almost can't help but do so. And maybe it's in part because Nietzsche's ideas are just a little too difficult to deal with and still have a good game. Like that might, if you really took them seriously in a positive way, like your game is going to be a mess.
I think, and again, I'm no freaking expert on Nietzsche at this point. Based on the what I have read, I don't feel like I got the same sense from the guy that I felt in pop culture people seem to get.
He's surprising to read. It's not
like
what you hear.
I did not get the same. I did not reach the same conclusion about his ideas that other people did.
Right.
And in fact, there have been many real life figureheads that have taken his ideals to such a degree to where that what they justify, kind of like what these guys are doing.
Yes.
And I just got the sense that that was a misunderstanding of what he was saying.
I think so.
Again, I could be wrong. Like I could just be not the one not getting it. I could be the one interpreting it in my own and using my own moral compass to sort of like make it fit with what that's totally possible. But I just didn't get that sense. And so it is interesting. I'm curious if I were to sit in the same room as Tetsuya Takahashi and ask him, I would ask him this question. It seems to me that you are putting Nietzschean ideas and his philosophy as like an ideal to oppose in Xenosaga.
Yeah.
How much of that was intentional?
Yeah.
And what do
It
you
could be unintentional.
How do you feel about Nietzsche? Is I think what I would ask him.
That's a good question. I would say it has to be intentional. Like, this is too much. Every antagonist is like, oh, I love Nietzsche. Every one of them. And you're just like, okay, but aren't we like, Nietzsche didn't like, he's controversial. He's like, like agree or disagree with certain things, but there should be much you find in Nietzsche. This is what I discovered was shocking to me. There's a lot to agree with with Nietzsche. Even if you're religious, like you don't have to do this, man.
Yeah, right.
I saw the same thing. And I don't know how I feel about it either.
Yeah. I'm not saying good or bad one way or the other.
Right.
I'm just kind of still undecided on that. He says something pretty important here, and this is going to start building into the Shion Kevin dynamic. Your heart, I don't understand. Okay, sorry, here it is. Come, and you will see. Choose what you truly desire. Again, they're all pressuring her to stop doing things she doesn't want to do, to stop denying her instincts.
Yes, but
what she wants, what she really wants, what her instinct's telling her to do.
Yes.
They're trying to tell her to embrace that and stop denying herself what she wants.
Yes. This is crucial.
It's super key.
In understanding what happens with her and Kevin soon.
Yes.
This part is absolutely crucial.
Yes. So choose what you truly desire. You met him. He's with us. He's talking about Kevin. I don't understand. He was a testament. I can't suddenly just accept that. This is part of her denying what he's telling her not to do.
Yes.
Do what your instincts are telling you to do. You want to go with him. So he says, that's not what your will is saying. Your heart throbs for him. You feel passion for him. You want to see him, don't you? He wants to see you too. Stop it. Stop talking to me. Then Jin comes in. Shion, you mustn't listen to him. Now, this will happen again.
Be an ascetic. Practice asceticism is what Jin, of course, the master of traditions and old ways,
I think
Jin practices it quite a bit himself.
Going through this the second time, and like paying closer attention to moments like this as they lead into the Kevin Shion dynamic that I've been kind of alluding to this whole time, I'm starting to really, really like this. And I hope we get to the scene today between Jin and Shion where she's like, why did you get in my way or whatever? Like, why did you interfere?
Right,
And he
'cause you held her
tries to
back.
talk to her. And then like, she's like, shut up, just go away. And he walks
Right.
out and says pathetic. Remember that line? And it sounds like he's calling her
Yes,
pathetic
but
at
it's
first, but
himself.
he's really talking to himself.
Yeah.
That was my favorite scene of the entire game.
Really?
On
Upon
the
a second playthrough?
playthrough. And I can't wait to talk about why. I hope we
Very
get to it.
interesting. Very
I
interesting.
hope we get to it today. But it's all being built up to with lines like this, right? Jin steps in to interfere at this point. Virgil is like, do what your heart is telling you to do. Stop denying yourself. Be the Ubermensch and be a beast.
Yes.
And stop being beholden to whatever your ideology or society has told you
Straight
should
up,
do.
just Nietzsche. Just,
Right,
yeah,
that's
he's
what I'm
just
saying.
quoting Nietzsche to her, yeah.
And Jin says,
is like,
nope,
don't.
do
Yes.
not listen to Nietzschean ideas.
Nietzsche equals bad.
Do not do that.
Yes.
Bad idea. And I love that it's Jin who is the one telling her not to do it, because that's just
Yeah.
going to make her want to do it more because of the complication
true,
of
totally
their
true.
of their relationship. So
Yeah.
even if he's
like a knee-jerk.
right in the
Yeah.
context of this game's reading of the Nietzschean ideas and whether they are good or not to listen to, and Jin is correct in his saying don't listen to that, she's already going to have a bias to not accept Jin's advice
Totally.
because of their complicated past.
And we've talked about this before. In fact, I think we talked about this with Shion and Jin, so I'll only touch on it briefly. Just the way that family members fall into roles
Yes.
within a family, and just, but you're the one who's unreasonable, and you're the one who everyone listens to and is the smart one, and you can't be the smart one. You're not the smart one. Your sibling's the smart one. And like different ways that every family kind of has this dynamic. It's so hard to break that. And so even in this moment where it's like, just the fact that Jin tells her to do it is so heavily ingrained in her.
Yes, to resist that.
Doesn't matter how right he is or whether they've repaired their relationship. You can fall right back into that
it's so easy.
toxic family dynamic so fast,
so easy.
fast. I've seen it happen, and I've experienced it so many times. It's ridiculous.
It's so fetching easy to fall back into it.
It's like we're like, for me and my siblings, it's like we're all in our 30s. Why does this keep happening? It's funny.
Yeah. And I want to go a little bit into some of my experiences that tie into why I feel
Yeah.
like I'm understanding this better, but I want to do it for that scene
Okay, cool.
between he and her later. So Virgil, don't be foolish. This doesn't concern you. Just keep quiet. I feel like Kevin said exactly the same thing to Alan, because Alan kind of stepped in like, wait a second
Yeah.
here. You're
Yep.
telling me this and that, and like, this doesn't make sense. Shut up. This doesn't concern you.
Yeah, what? Who are you? Go away.
So like all of the people around Shion supporting her
Yeah.
are like, these Nietzschean ideas, I'm not so sure about that.
They're kind of
they're
like a
"Shut up,
brain."
don't
Yeah.
talk. Just listen to me. It's just kind of funny.
That's very funny.
Anyway, this is where Feb's voice comes in. Please stop. Please stop. Don't confuse Shion anymore. What is this? Just who the hell do you think you are showing up now? Virgil says to her. Lewis, so she's calling him by his first name, the familiarity relationship that they had. She's breaking through that ice. Why do you reject the truth? You can't change anything unless you accept who you really are. You're the same as those who lost their bodies and wander aimlessly. You're no different either. You're just like me. This is their fallback.
Okay.
This is the fallback villain counterpoint. You're just like me.
Oh, me too. Twinsies. Monster here on Patreon. He's got a really good note here that is like a huge personality shaping event for both Virgil and Shion is the fact that they could not prevent their most beloved person from dying.
Good point.
And that in a way they are very much alike, right?
Yeah.
They are a lot alike, but there is a difference, and it is in how you would choose to react to situations as opposed to be reacted upon, like, whether you're going to take agency or not, or allow these things to destroy and own your life.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point.
Yeah, they are alike. They are. But that's not the point.
I don't understand you, says Febronia, and you have come to understand us Realians as well. And this was the result. Yeah, I came to understand all right. I understand how pointless it all is.
Yes, it is also pointless.
So he's really fighting to
Yep.
not touch whatever pain she's starting to tap into here.
Remember when I said that Nietzsche's Philosophy is pointless. Boom! Once again, Virgil taking note, just spouting that Nietzschean propaganda.
Enough talking.
Enough.
Do you
talk.
really think that I'm still hanging on to you? I feel nothing for any of you. Really, he's in total denial mode at this point.
Oh, totally. So he's telling Shion but he is denying
he's denying his own
emotions.
So this is totally reversed it.
So interesting, huh?
He thought he was following the Nietzschean philosophy of not denying instincts, but he actually is doing the opposite.
He is denying his true love.
He's actually the one denying his instincts.
And I think as that gets exploited, that is probably, at least in part, what causes him
maybe this is what
to dissipate.
This is what Takashi would have told me to pay attention to.
Sure.
If I were incorrectly reading into his feelings on Nietzsche. That's not true, and you know it, Lewis. You have returned to this place for a reason. You chose to become a testament, so you could return here. You became a testament in order to get right here and watch this again and make contact with me however way you possibly could, even in this unconscious dive into Shion's past. You became
deep.
a testament
I love that.
In order to come back right here.
Yeah, because you missed me.
That's like a powerful freaking observation by Fabronia. Because this moment proved who you once were. You're trying to reconnect with who you once were. That's my reason. This is my proof. Don't make me laugh. I regret nothing. I am here precisely because I have finally accepted myself and this world. Those of you who reject this world, you can never understand. Fabronia says, we do not reject this world. We just want to believe in a new order that can be born from discord. We just want to believe that a single thought can change the entire world and shape the future. That sounds a lot like platitudes. I'm not really sure what she's trying to say there.
That's
not sure what she's trying to say.
Well, it's kind of what can't remember his name all of a sudden. Red Testament man.
Kevin.
What Kevin was saying earlier, a world swept clean of our differences. He's just pontificating on something that, if you really think about it, actually sounds bad, right? But it's like, okay, whatever. It's platitudes. Yeah, it just sounds nice.
It sounds nice. I'm not sure
it's fluffy.
What exactly you're trying to say with that. Yeah. This is just wishful thinking, he says. You're only clinging to what little hope you have left. She says, anything can come true if you wish for it to. Didn't our relationship prove that, Lewis? I don't know how it did, but okay.
Oh, Lewis, though.
She's been calling him Lewis this whole time. You died and left me. I have nothing to say to you. She says, I know you have suffered. My death tied your consciousness to this place. But I want to help you, Lewis. I want to free you from this cursed place forever. Just leave me alone. You're already dead, Fabronia. He starts, breaking down.
Yeah,
Lewis,
he's breaking.
Although my body is dead, I am still here with you. I'm right beside you. There's no reason for you to suffer. I couldn't even save you. He finally reveals the thing.
Yep.
That's what it really was. I couldn't save you. That's the point of his trauma. No, you're wrong. You did save me. You taught me that by sharing all of our feelings that we would be able to change the world, and that alone was more than enough. So you don't hate me? None of this would have ever happened. Or do you hate me? None of this would have ever happened even if you hadn't gotten involved. Or if you hadn't gotten involved. Why did you have to? Why? It's too much to bear. All I really want is for you. Let's go now, Lewis. She can show us the way to have a future for both humans and realians.
And then they hug. I remember there's a hugging scene, and then they both kind of disappear.
Yep. And
I thought it was very good. It was a very good scene.
Gone now.
Yep,
he has sort of like finally resolved what he was really after, what his will to power was taking him to. He just didn't realize what it really was. He thought it was one thing, so he could come here and deny he cared about all of it.
Yep.
But really it was to get there and come back in contact with who he had become.
Yeah.
And then leave there with Fabronia and be at peace.
It's so good because the thing that is keeping him immortal is his will to power. And the thing that he needs to do is to let go of that and to be okay with mortality.
Yeah.
Right? And Fabronia kind of convinces him to be okay with it.
Join the collective unconscious with me. So great scene. Really liked it.
I thought it was very good.
I thought it was a great resolution to Virgil's sort of like little arc that we've been following here for these past 3 games.
Yeah.
So from here, they then go with Shion back to Labyrinthos. up
Yeah.
to the point where we've already kind of touched on a lot of this, her father and mother being murdered by these Realians. They enter too late. But then it's when Kevin steps in that it starts getting crazy. And so there's a lot of stuff they talk about here that I want to pull up the script for.
Okay.
Where is it? Kevin Winnicott. Here we go. Kevin's voice comes in. Everything was supposed to begin here. But in order to awaken Abel, the resonance of the power between them was necessary. The gnosis that attacked Milsha in the past did not arrive because of Miss Rahi, nor Albedo's link to Udu. No, they were called by Shion when she was a child. So her innate ability to sort of reach to that upper domain in that terrible moment of trauma sort of like ripped the rift between the two planes and all the gnosis poured in. So it was because of her, I don't know, whatever that innate power is that she has, that she called this. And so now she's being forced. This is what Chaos and Nephilim and to some extent Jin, through all the stuff that's come before them, have been referencing when they've said it's not, knowing the truth is not necessarily going to make you happy. We're not sure if you're really ready to like face this yet. All the way back to episode 1 where Nephilim at the end of the Encephalon dive sequence said, you know what, I just really don't think you're ready to freaking hear this yet. We've got to wait a little longer.
One more year.
What she was avoiding telling her was, you were the one who freaking brought the gnosis to this universe.
Right.
It's you. And so there was a part of me that watched her turn to Jin. Actually, there's been several moments where she's turned to Jin because Jin knew all of this and just said nothing.
Did you know? Yeah.
Like, you knew about Kevin creating these realities that killed Mom. You knew about Dad doing all of these things. Right. You knew that I called the gnosis and you didn't say anything to me. It really does call into question, or it did for me at least, what Jin is thinking, like what he's doing, like what on earth is going through his mind to not at any point over all of these years tell you the truth about what really happened. Now,
when she's young, I mean, I get like you have to wait until she's old enough to like process the fact that she is responsible for the disappearance of the entire universe.
Yeah.
Or 80% of it, or however much the gnosis
at this point
gobbled up, right? Yeah. You can't tell her when she's young. And I think that when you don't say something that you have to say, it becomes easier to just keep ignoring it.
Putting it off.
For longer. And of course, it gets worse and worse, right?
Yeah.
Until it finally breaks out. But she kind of stopped talking to him, and I think he felt like maybe it was easier.
I tried to, as I was thinking those things about Jin, what the freak is wrong with you, bro? Like, how have you not told her literally any of this until right now?
Yeah.
I tried to think, okay, what would happen if I come back to like get my sister after this horrific event?
Yeah.
And I'm maybe trying to like talk to her about what happened, and she seems to not have a memory of it.
I can tell. That's a good thing.
She's repressing this memory.
Right.
Do I have, I mean, first of all, I would want to, personally, I would just go immediately get a therapist and like get someone professional to step in and try to do this the right way. But
can you tell the therapist that she's responsible?
Sure, right.
How would he deal with that?
That's a great point in and of itself.
Yeah.
But the point I'm trying to say by saying I would try to get professional help is that I wouldn't be sure that I would feel confident that I would be equipped to try to help necessarily.
Yeah.
Right. Like, do I have the tools, the knowledge at my disposal to even approach trying to help her work through that?
Is this why he was becoming a doctor or something?
I don't know.
Maybe not. Probably not.
But I could see that being a reason why, like, I don't want to mess this up even more.
Right,
I don't want
easily
to
could
re-traumatize her.
Yeah.
Or
make her do it again.
Make it worse or repeat the mistake or whatever. If I try to do that, it could be worse. So I shouldn't do that.
Right.
I all of a sudden I could see, okay, that feels more justified to me.
Sure.
At least for the beginning years. But as we're like literally in the place, watching it all happen again, and I'm like,
and she's older.
She's about to find out in like 10 minutes anyways. I might want to soften this landing a bit.
Interesting.
Hey, just so you know, we're going to step into this room and this is what's going to happen. She would probably reject that or try to, no, that can't be right. Just like she did with Kevin.
Of course she would.
So maybe it would have been pointless and maybe that's what he's thinking.
Yeah.
Hey, maybe he's just totally lost.
It's better
he
to
could
play
also
ignorant.
just be a person, and then you also take into account their complicated history.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite scenes from episode 2 was where Jin and Chaos were sitting together, the moth and the flame scene, and he discloses that the reason that he treats Shion the way that he does is because he doesn't want to get too close, in fear that if she really sees him for who he is, she would want to cut all ties forever.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
And that he wouldn't have a sister anymore.
Right.
So at least if we have this complicated, argumentative,
tense relationship.
Difficult relationship, there's at least a relationship there. But if I tell her, hey, this is what really happened and who you really are, and by the way, I could have been there, but I chose to prioritize this data over my family, that she'd be like, I don't want to have anything to do with you anymore.
Ever.
Goodbye. And so this is why he just couldn't find the courage
Makes perfect sense
to really get into it with her, and why he calls himself pathetic in the scene that follows.
Because he knows what he should do. Like he knows everything
exactly
you
what
say.
he should
He's
do.
like, yeah, I totally should have done that. I thought about it 12 times.
Yeah.
Didn't do it because I'm pathetic. You know? And he's got this lower opinion of himself. It's very common, by the way, for that type of relationship, a tense relationship, because, I'm afraid that if you knew the real me, then you wouldn't like me. And so I keep this. I've met people like this before.
Yeah.
It's always really sad because usually they're lying to themselves about, or they're I don't know, they're not giving enough credit to the other person to be able to still love them, right? But it's because of they don't feel worthy to be loved in the first place. So they're like, well, of course nobody would love me if they found out this certain thing about me. So I can't love myself. So of course nobody else would do it. Therefore, this is better to have this tense kind of thing where we're always yelling at each other, but we're still in the vicinity. I can think of probably a dozen examples.
You know, how many times has it happened to you? I ask this to both of you and to the people watching, where you have a problem, or you think there may be a potential problem with someone you're close to, family or friend or whatever, and you start playing in your head how this conversation's going to go.
I do that
and
so often.
You run through the whole thing, and it's a disaster.
Yes. Don't do that.
Oh my gosh, this is going to be so bad. I'm going to get pissed because they're going to react this way. They're going to be pissed. This is going to be horrible.
Yes.
And then
many
the
times.
time actually comes to have a conversation, and it's just literally could not go any more differently than you imagined it. They're totally understanding, totally like a person who cares about you, wants the relationship to be good, works hard, and you get through it, and it's like, I'm an idiot. Why did I imagine my friend or whatever being this totally disagreeable, unreasonable person? or why did I think there's no way in which they will accept me or what I have to say?
It's got to be self-image. It's because that's how you are seeing yourself. But people are, not never, but people are usually not as hard on you as you are on yourself.
Right.
So however you view yourself, especially in a difficult situation, other people will likely be a little more charitable to you than that. But it's hard for you to really think that, because it's like, but they don't know. But they don't know. They don't know the real me the way that I do, you know? So I get it. But at the same time, it's because if you have a really poor self-image, then you just assume that that's what everyone is seeing.
Yeah, I've been on both sides of that kind of thing, both where I'm all stressed out about it and worried and anxious and like thinking
yeah.
my friendship's going to be over after this conversation. And then like the conversation happens and it was actually really good. And this person is just amazing. And I'm like, crap, like what was I thinking? I've also been on the other side of that where I could clearly see by the way this person was aggressively approaching me that they were assuming I was going to respond one way and were sort of preemptively protecting themselves. And I was just like,
It's just super defensive.
bro, like calm down, everything's good. Like I don't think that.
Right.
Like everything you just said is not true.
Which sometimes is a good thing to hear.
And then like it goes over just fine. So I think people probably just need to be more aware of this than maybe they are. You imagine things in a certain way because of how you view yourself, and that is tainted a lot of the time. Especially people a lot of the people who responded from last week's video. By the way, I just really want to say thank you to everybody who left such amazing messages to everything that was talked about in the last episode. But people who understand this, be more aware of that fact. It'll help you a lot.
I think it will. I think it will.
Your self-image is hurting the way you're viewing the way people will interact with you, the way you view others and yourself. So.
Gosh, in that way, it's almost better for the whole world that you see yourself more positively.
It's yes.
You think, oh, what's the harm? It's just what I think of myself. I just think I'm an idiot.
On that end, or else you might cause some problems that didn't need to happen.
Because then you start coloring other people with your assumptions, and that's
assumptions. That's really what it comes down to. It's always assumptions. Like and this is why and you've pointed this out, and I
assume positively, because you can't help but assume.
I recognize that you can't help but make assumptions.
Yes.
But try your best to limit that.
Limit them and be charitable with your assumptions.
Yes.
If you're assuming everyone's wrong and you're the one who's right, just like be a little more charitable to the other people.
Yes.
And then also, if you just assume that you're evil and everyone else is good compared to you, which social media exacerbates that, be a little more charitable to yourself in that case.
Exactly. Okay, so let's get through this conversation with Kevin. Kevin, is that really you? Says Shion. Kevin says, yes, it's me. What's wrong? Have you forgotten my face? I think it's important. I know I keep tangenting here, but it's important to view everything Kevin says as a manipulation. I think it's really important to view it this way.
So he's almost like he's making her feel guilty.
He's not being genuine at all with basically anything he says here.
He's like, oh, you forgot me, huh? Of course I didn't forget you. Why would I forget? I can't forget. You're my everything.
Every step is calculated.
Oh, yeah. That's
and this goes back to the flower scene you were talking about.
Yeah.
This ties into that. So he started to have his ice wall broken a little bit by Shion with water the flowers and stuff.
Yeah.
And then he comes back later. All the flowers are freaking dead during the descent. And she's crying. And he's like reinforced in his ideal. Yeah. This is all pointless.
I need the power of God to overcome this. Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
Right.
So that basically reinforced that and is what drove him into the path of becoming this Kevin, who is pretending to be the soft-spoken, caring, but all of that was a manipulation of her because they are seeking to use the God relics to, well, I won't say exactly what, because we'll get that next time, but they are all trying to use the God relics and Udu's power for a specific purpose. And in his case, that's also what he's doing. He admits to a portion of that here, but not the full truth of it. So, yes, it's me. What's wrong? Have you forgotten my face? That's a manipulative thing to say. Yeah. No, I haven't forgotten. I've never once forgotten. You know, getting her worked up. He's cranking her up a little bit here. I've come for you, Shion. Kevin, tell me, why did you hide yourself all this time? Why are you a testament? And he says, I needed power. That's why I took this form. But what I look like is not important. It's still me. Nothing has changed. Of course, everything has changed, but she wants so badly to believe nothing has changed because she is so enamored and attached to that memory that was shown to her by Udu earlier. Yeah. That beautiful moment that she would be willing to suffer eternal recurrence for.
Yes. Yeah.
That's what she's clinging on to, that image of Kevin, right? Nothing has changed, he says. A manipulation of that fact, that she's holding on to that. But the Kevin in this time, he sacrificed all those people, all those Realians to research the Zohar, even my mother. I had no choice.
Right.
I'm sorry.
The second time we're hearing
yes, I'm sorry I made you suffer, but you must understand that it was all done for you.
That's so funny. That's exactly what her dad said.
Yes. But what's funny is
crazy.
Her dad means it. Kevin does not.
Yep.
And it's tough to explain why, but it is true.
Well, once again, just like Virgil and Shion are similar in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Well, Kevin and Shion's dad are also similar in a lot of ways. But the way that they feel, or maybe just their compassion for other people, is what makes the difference.
Yeah. For me, are you saying this was all for me? It was all for you. I was always thinking of you. Come with me. I need you, Shion. And Junior steps in. Okay, what are you doing? Like, cut this crap. Like, nobody believes that except her, right?
Yes. But he's speaking to her heart directly. And as we saw in the previous scene with Virgil and with Mizrahi and others, the way to awaken Cosmos is for you to do to follow your heart.
Yes.
Right. And she's getting conflicting messages here. Like, testaments are bad. Kevin is bad. Also, follow your heart. Kevin basically is your heart. Do what feels good. Do what you want to do, and do what's, don't deny your passions and stuff. And that's what leads her, I think, to this point. And she just kind of lives that way anyways. That's kind of how she is. She's one who basically just acts on instinct and emotion anyways. And so obviously that's what she's going to try to do here.
Yeah.
But it's important to understand that at the very least, there is a good side to that as well, to following your heart and acting on emotion and stuff sometimes, instead of always being, hyper rational about everything, which is Kevin. Kevin is the hyper rational about everything kind of approach.
Yeah.
And Shion is kind of his opposite in that way. But it explains her actions a little bit here.
Yeah. So Junior steps in, like, you're saying it's all for her benefit? He's silence. This is none of your concern. He's like, it sure as hell is my concern. You kidding me?
For real.
Kevin, don't you understand? None of you can save Shion. Jin says, what do you mean? I hope you can explain yourself. The logical.
Yes, please rationalize. Jin. Oh, Kevin's got the rationale,
I'll
man.
give you a chance to explain that, but you're going to have to be pretty convincing. Kevin says, Jin Uzuki, I'm sure you already realized what's happening to Shion's body. So this is where he goes through and explains that she and all the people that were in these experiments, they have the same illness, and contacting Udu slowly kills them. In fact, because Cosmos uses the power from the Zohar, like draws from that, even anytime Cosmos uses her powers, it's slowly killing Shion too.
That's true, yeah.
He explains all that, right? This leads to their own death. The test subjects' wills are unable to stand the stress of direct contact with Udu. They eventually fall into a coma and die. That line straight out of Jurassic Park. Fall into a coma and die.
Nice.
That's what what's his name says about the dinosaurs, so they don't get lysine.
Right.
Alan, then why didn't you make them stop the experiments? If you cut off contact with Udu, wouldn't their illness stop? You don't have to force them to talk with Udu. And I like how Junior steps in and is like, well, you can't. They're like, huh? You can't cut off contact with Udu. Junior is confirming. He's watching us from another realm. You can't get away from him. Of course, he knows this because of all his contacts and attempts to, what do they call it, where they create that circle and they subdue the Udu waves or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So Jin says, Udu chooses to make contact. Are you saying those waves have a will? So I guess Jin hadn't realized yet that Udu is a sentient being. So Kevin says, don't you see, Shion? I became a testament to save you. Without this form, without this power, I can't save you. The only ones who can save you are me and Telos. So save you from this illness that you have, right?
Yeah.
Telos is going to save Chief? Wait a minute. What about Cosmos? You designed her too.
Well, Nephilim told Shion that Cosmos is the only thing that can save the world and all this stuff.
Right.
And so this is a little bit of a contradiction in what she had been told elsewhere.
Yeah. At the same time, I think we'll resolve that contradiction next time.
We will. Yeah.
But Cosmos is just a prototype built to collect data for Telos. Cosmos is a prototype. Is that where you try to dispose of her? Yes. Cosmos grew too close to Shion. Explains that Cosmos is killing her. Okay. So let's skip forward a little bit here. Okay, Kevin says, Shion, I want you to come with me. If things progress as they have been, then you'll have no future. This is the only way to save you. Please listen, Shion. I don't want to lose you again. So let's take a step back after all this revelation and examine where we are with Shion here real quick. Shion has just come to realize, or I guess been forced to remember, I am the one responsible for the universe being devoured by freaking Gnosis right now.
Yep.
This automatically creates what we just talked about with assuming what people think of me.
Oh, right.
Because she starts to
Everyone
think,
must hate me right now.
everyone must hate me.
They must, yeah.
And they probably wish I would just die anyways.
I would think the same thing.
Maybe that's why they interfered with me going with Kevin, because they hope that if I die, then maybe that'll get rid of the Gnosis too. She says something like this to Cosmos in the scene that follows this, right? So she's already making all those assumptions and having those conversations with her friends in her mind that have all the bad assumptions in it. And you see this manifest in the way she gets real defensive with Junior, like, what, you guys think that if I come along, like, I'm just going to bring in more Gnosis? And he's like, no, like, we're just concerned about your health. Like, for real. Are you okay? Like, you're starting to see.
And then in her head, like, they're really thinking that, I know better.
Yeah, right. So this is key. This is going to create the situation in which a lot of people have misunderstandings about Shion and why she chooses what she does in the later scene. She has had this horribly traumatic thing revived into her conscious mind, having to deal with that and the added burden of I'm responsible for this, and a person who she loved, and I'm going to put an asterisk on the word loved, and I'm going to get to that in the scene that I was talking about between Jin and her right after this. Okay. That's where we're going to end for today, by the way, is in that scene. We'll do chapter 8 next time. So all of this combined is putting her in this, like, this fragile, absolutely, just like thin ice she is standing on here.
And she feels very alone.
Before collapsing into just total mania, I would think. She's hanging by a thread. After going through that roller coaster of stuff.
Right.
And the one person who she felt like she genuinely felt happy with, and that gave her the kind of comfort that she had wanted ever since she was a child, is alive again and is saying, I did all of this for you. Come back with me and be happy again. So this is a very tempting proposition to escape all of that crap that you just had to freaking be reminded of / like be forced to face and deal with. So I can either face all of that, which is about the most painful thing I can imagine, or I can go with this man who can make me feel really good.
Yes. I mean, it's obvious. It's the no-brainer.
No-brainer to a person who's actually having to make that kind of choice.
Yeah, but let's go back with Virgil now, right?
Yes.
Virgil couldn't save someone and found solace in reuniting back with them, and then was able to kind of peacefully move on, right? Shion was there for that, right? She saw that whole thing. That just adds on one more layer to this, right? Kevin is the person that Shion couldn't save. He's back. Now it's time for her to reconcile to him, right? And why can't she? Why not? Why does Virgil was a dung heap, dude. Like, why can't I get to have a happy ending? Why did he get one?
Yeah,
and you tell me I have to, like, not go back with the one regret, that the biggest regret I have in my whole life?
Yeah.
Well, now she has more regrets, but that's a recent thing. This Kevin one is much deeper rooted, I think. So 4 years, right?
Sure.
Instead of, I just found out I murdered billions of people, right? It's like, but Kevin. Anyways, just one other thing. I think I actually do believe that as much as people will say what they will say, 95% of people will do exactly what Shion did in that situation. Sure. Maybe 99. Maybe 99.9.
Yeah. If it's not that high, which I think is a justified thing to believe, it's certainly
way up there.
Certainly really high.
Yeah. Like, and I can easily see it.
The reason why this next scene to me was my favorite scene in the game is precisely because of exploring the reason why that is true.
Okay.
Why is it that high of a percentage of people would make that choice of what is essentially the easy way?
Yes.
Right? Now, of course, it's on the surface seems like, well, of course, everyone's going to choose the easy thing because it's the easy thing.
Right.
I don't think it's
This
quite
is
that
deeper than
simple.
that.
It's deeper
Yeah.
than that. And I wanted to kind of pull from some of my own experiences to explain a little bit of why I feel like I'm getting it now. And what was so cool about watching this scene again was that I totally felt like I understood both Jin and Shion simultaneously in the scene.
Yeah.
Both from two very different points of view, two different points in my life. One where I was closer to Shion's age, one now that I'm basically Jin's age.
Yeah, that's
and and have a younger sibling about that distance apart.
Yeah.
Who is also a sister.
Right.
And there's some it taught me something about myself that I really, really needed to, I think, hear right now.
Yeah.
Which made it really stick with me. So, okay, they escape. Jin interferes. He's like, you cannot listen to them. I cannot allow you to go with this man. Everything he's saying might make sense to you, but I do not trust him, and I'm not letting you do this. The worst person imaginable to have stopped her
was Jin.
Was him. As far as like, from her perspective, as far as like what their life together has been like, the way that he has sort of parented her. This is like possibly the worst person. If your goal is to convince her Kevin is is manipulating you,
right?
Jin should not be the one to say that.
So he should have,
because she's not going to believe him.
He should have played the reverse psychology game, like. Shion, you go to him right now.
Yeah.
You go to him right now. Listen to me. You go stand next to him. And that's what he should have done.
So
young lady.
He gets Cosmos. Oh, I loved that too. So he asked Cosmos, please take Shion and get her out of here.
Yeah, that's right.
And Kevin tries to, as the creator of Cosmos, command her, no, Cosmos, don't do that. Bring her to me.
Right.
And I loved how she was like, I have new creators now because my black box was damaged, right? Like in the fight with Telos.
Right.
And now part of my base code is Kevin Winnicott and Shion Uzuki. They're technically my creators now. So I'm not going to listen to you. Loved that touch. That was nice. It was kind of like just a really cool moment of the story where Cosmos is like, nope, I'm not going to listen to you, Kevin. And so it takes off. They all run away and get back to the Elsa and escape as Milsha disappears. Well, it's not really Milsha disappearing. They're kind of coming out of the unconscious state that they're in Shion's mind and coming back to like the real world.
Yeah.
But she did literally summon Abel's Ark, which is what they were really after from the beginning.
And they did literally get Cosmos's code.
Yes.
And like rebooted her system.
That's true.
That all literally still
that
happens
did literally happen. That's true. Anyway, this scene between Jin and Shion I thought was just really, really, really great. So I wanted to talk a little bit about love and what constitutes like real, genuine love. So in my life, you know, I've had a few relationships, but my very first girlfriend, I would say when people talk about the feelings associated with being in love, I had those to a very, very like extremely strong degree with this girl. Like I felt so powerfully these emotions that I think you're shown in media when two people are in love, just being enamored with somebody, just being like so like you just need them so much in your life, and the thought of losing them is just so devastating that you would just fall apart. And a breakup is the type of thing that literally derails your life for 5 years, right? Like you just can't function in the world because
Right.
you're just so distraught over this. I want to warn against that.
Yes, it is. You especially as a teenager to become that dependent on somebody else and
Yes.
to live for somebody in that way, and to be that, to have your, I don't know, I don't think that's very healthy.
Yeah.
I had a similar situation.
That is not what love is.
right.
What I have learned in all of those years of being a like completely inept human being who basically like did not function for quite literally 5 years,
Right.
until I left and came back and started living with you guys down in Provo, and we started
Yeah.
the channel and stuff. That was when I finally started coming out of it. But there was about a 5-year period where I almost didn't function. I was going through the motions of life, but like I really wasn't going anywhere. I wasn't accomplishing. I would go to work and make money,
Right.
but I wasn't moving forward in building any kind of real life for myself. I was shut down except for like the base functions
Yeah.
of survival almost.
I will say, at least at the time, you did write a couple of pretty good songs back then.
Debatable.
They might be funny to listen to now, but like that's teenage stuff. Like that, I thought they were perfect for what they were.
Anyway, that wasn't love that I was experiencing.
Right.
That was me finding a sense of self-worth in the reciprocation. I was defining my worthiness of being loved or accepted by whether or not this person reciprocated my
Right.
love. If that wasn't the case, it meant to me, and this is all unconscious, by the way, it meant to me something was terribly, terribly wrong with me.
Right.
So it's not just this person made the decision that this is not the best relationship for me and for the life I want to live and the kind of family I want to have. This is not some kind of pragmatic decision. This means the way that she sees me is as this creature, this unlovable, all the things I believed about myself already. Right.
To be trodden underfoot. Yeah.
So I was interpreting her decision as a confirmation of all the horrible things I believed.
Yeah.
And so the feeling of being so enamored, so in love, had nothing to do with love and everything to do with this selfish kind of validating or validation that maybe I'm not really so bad, right? Maybe I'm not that lowly thing that is unworthy or unfit to be loved by someone else. I truly believed all those things about myself, especially through high school. And I didn't have my first relationship until right at the end of high school. So I was probably 17. I was maybe almost 18, probably 17 when we first got together. And so that relationship represented to me validating or propping myself up, allowing myself to believe as long as this is in place, I'm an
value.
okay person and I have some value, right? So when she decided, for reasons totally unrelated to all of that nonsense, that she wanted to go a different direction in her life, I could not accept that was the reason. And so it was just absolutely devastating to me. And I became totally desperate. And then once I realized there was no salvaging it, and she went off and got married, and it was over, it was just an absolute, like, there's no word to describe it. I can't explain in language how horrible that felt, right? So it took many, many years of self-reflection to realize all of that was selfish. You didn't even really love her in the first place. You were using her to validate yourself and to have the will to accept that was also really devastating.
Jeez, and throws you for a whole new loop.
Because then it's like, oh my goodness, I saw myself raised the way I was and taught the way I was to be a selfless person,
Right.
to have compassion for people, to self-sacrifice, all of these things that I believed that were part of my moral compass or whatnot.
Right.
And yet I was absolutely using that relationship to prop myself up. That is true. And that was a hard thing to accept. But I had to, if I wanted to get out of this absolute pit of darkness I was in and have any future in my life. And of course, this didn't all happen in one like moment of epiphany. This was many years of sort of gradual climbing out of that place. And so from then on, you know, I've had to kind of redefine, okay, what does love actually look like then, right? And, you know, that's going to be a lifelong process, and I won't get into that. That's not what I'm trying to talk about. What I'm trying to talk about is that's not what love is.
Right. That's basically what Shakespeare was making fun of when he wrote Romeo and Juliet.
Yeah.
Is that situation with like, you know, teenagers and I will literally like, you know, commit suicide because you are gone or whatever. It's just identifying your whole life around this one other person and then just
Right.
Yeah.
This is exactly what Shion is doing with Kevin. Now, it's what Kevin's doing is even worse because Kevin is knowingly using that against her.
Yes, but for some reason, you understand Kevin when this happens more. Shion takes some more work than Kevin because for Kevin, it's easier to write him off as, oh, he's just a manipulative like jerk.
POS,
and, and like, you know, that's just who he is. But why did Shion do that thing, which is way not as bad?
Yeah.
It's funny.
So you have to understand, and I think after maybe explaining that a little bit about myself, that there's probably a lot of people out there who have either had similar situations or are maybe in one. And by
lots.
hearing that might, you know, go like, oh, you know, like, is that what's happening with me? You know, ask yourself that question and understand that you can never have a loving relationship that works with somebody if this is what you feel about yourself.
That's so good. I love that this episode has kind of come back to that several times.
Yes.
Your opinion of yourself actually does affect more than just yourself.
Oh, yes.
And I think that's something that a lot of people, myself included, could really do well to internalize.
Oh, yes.
It makes the whole world worse.
Yes.
When you think you're worse than you actually are.
Yes. That is the key. That is the key. Because I don't think many people who are depressed and who look at themselves this way, I don't know if they understand. I guess what I'm saying is it seems like maybe it's just, I'm really only hurting myself by talking down to myself.
So
this
what?
way.
What do you care?
And I deserve it anyways. So, but it's not.
Yeah.
You are, by viewing yourself this way, engaging in relationships in which you are unintentionally causing damage to others around you. And I did this a lot, not just in my relationship with my first girlfriend. I did this throughout all of those years, transitioning from childhood, like adolescence, into my early adulthood. I'd say between the years of about 14 or 15 to about 25, like my view of myself was causing me to latch on to certain ideals or relationships or things where I didn't mean to. I was not consciously trying to hurt anyone, but in that pursuit of trying to validate myself in whatever way I could, I was doing real damage to a lot of other people and led to many of the greatest regrets that I have. Many of the most embarrassing, the most, the things that I regret the most that I've done in my life kind of occurred in that stage. And it comes down to exactly what you're saying. Your view of yourself. So that's what you need to really be working on.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is understanding that this way you look at yourself is total nonsense. Now, you don't view it that way. You really believe it because of whatever traumatic thing happened to you that caused that belief to take root. And all of a sudden, your neural pathways, anyone who understands like brain development, neuroscience, whatnot, I'm not an expert. I'm not saying I get it. But with what little I understand, right? You come into this world as a baby, and the whole brain is just connected to everything. But in order to make quick connections and form memories and then be able to recall memory, certain connections get broken, and then you create like these almost like shortcuts between this part of the brain to this part of the brain so that you can fire quickly and retrieve information. This is the learning process.
Yeah.
So a baby has all this neuroplasticity, right? Like all of these different ways that neural connections could form depending on the experiences they have and how they choose to interpret that or how it ends up being interpreted. And what you interpret as being a truth is really nothing less than just a neural pathway that got created. And so then when your brain goes to recall that particular experience or that thing, that's what it meant. That's how I interpret the truth of what happened there. And that's the first thing to happen because that's the neural pathway that got created. That's how habits work too, right? So when you're trying to break a habit, the reason it's so hard is because your brain is firing in a way in which it's just habit. It's just automatic to just go there.
I've heard it fires that way so consistently that it actually creates like a highway almost, like a quicker access route. And also, like when signals get close to that, they will just take that route to get places that, and without even trying to, you end up reinforcing that behavior, and it becomes like literally ingrained into your brain. Right?
It's exactly like quite literally physically ingrained.
Yeah.
And that makes it harder. The more you ingrain that, the more you reinforce that, the stronger that connection becomes, the harder it is to break.
Right.
Which is why addictions are so difficult to overcome and whatnot. But it's not impossible. Our brains are amazing. And you do have the ability to break that connection and form a new one, a new habit of thinking that will totally change the way that you view yourself. And that is probably the most important work you can do in your own life, are break the neural connections that are damaging to yourself and to others unconsciously or unintentionally, form the ones that are healthy and that build the kind of life that will lead to your flourishing and the flourishing of those who choose to be a part of your life or who you bring into your life, right?
A big way to do that is to create new highways, right? To, even if you don't want to or something, start doing something else that's positive. Even if at the moment you're like, well, I don't want to do it. Well, it will become a habit the more you do it. And you'll want that highway to take precedence over the other one. Right.
This one gets broken, this old one. You break that down.
Yeah.
We don't have time to go into how you do that. You should seek a therapist to talk about that.
This is a way to do that, is to start creating new highways.
A new highway.
It takes time, but you can develop a habit over the course of, a month or so. And
they talk about it's like 21 days. It's like 3 weeks or whatever to break a habit or to form a new habit.
Or to form a new habit, yeah.
So in some cases, it won't take as long as you think, but it does take a lot of effort in those 3 weeks.
Oh, yes,
especially your first week of trying to break a habit and form a new one. It is.
It's the hardest.
Addictions are tough. Yeah. They're tough. So by no means is this easy, but it doesn't take as long as you might think. As long as you get to those new habits, you're disciplined and you have support, people who will help you, you can really start making those changes. And within short order, a matter of weeks and months, you can find that you can change a lot in your life. So anyway, all of that to put into context where Shion's at. This is why it's so difficult for her to say no to Kevin. Even though we're all sitting here, no, Kevin's manipulating you. There was one shot in particular, oh my goodness, it just like made my blood boil, where I can't remember what she said, but she's saying something about Kevin. I don't know if she's saying it to Jin or maybe because freaking like Junior starts like shooting guns at him or something. And she like grabs his hand and is like, guys, what are you doing? Stop. This is Kevin. This is my Kevin. He's not different. He's the same as always. But she's yelling that off screen, and it is focusing on him, and he's grinning as she's saying this. And he just knows he's manipulating her. It's working. What he's doing is working. He's in by no means there to help her.
Right.
This is all a manipulation. And that shot was so great at as far as reinforcing how terrible he
In a
is.
terrible way.
Right?
Yeah.
So anyway, that's the Shion part of that conversation that I wanted to kind of touch on there and why I started to kind of come around and understand where she's at.
Yeah.
Then there's the other side, the Jin side. Why is Jin struggling so much with just being able to talk to her on her level and meet her where she's at and say the right things and show love so that she can go, okay, I feel all of this desire and need to go be with him, but like I can at least see that Jin loves me.
Yeah.
He's not just doing this because he's my overbearing father figure who's trying to like tell me what to do. I can see he genuinely cares. This at least gives me a little bit of a torn feeling, right? Well, I can see he loves me, he cares me. So if he has doubts, maybe I should weigh that in my decision. But instead, he's real harsh with her. Like, stop it, knock it off. Like, stop being an idiot. No brother wants to see his sister die. Like the way he's talking to her is just so wrong.
Yep.
And I was like, dude, what are you doing?
But it's the role of his family was to speak like that. And
yes.
Yeah. Even in this situation.
The same exact thing applies as far as neural connections and pathways.
It's the same idea.
There has been a reinforced habit of how this relationship goes, and he doesn't know how to break it either.
Right.
And I started thinking about it, and I love my family, and I can't emphasize that enough. There are definitely still some real struggles, some real difficulties I have in communicating specifically with my family.
Yeah.
So if I get any one of them kind of like alone, I'm a lot better at it.
Yeah.
I can talk and have a real conversation and we can like connect a little bit. If I get into the family at Thanksgiving and I am so not there. I'm there, but my brain is somewhere else.
Yeah.
There is some kind of like escape hatch it tries to take in being in like the dynamic of the whole thing together. And no matter, at least up to this point, how hard I have talked myself into, I'm not going to do that this time. I am going to be present. I am going to open up. I am going to be a part of the family, and I'm going to have a good time. And then I just step into that house, and the energy hits me of the place, and I feel like I cannot help it. I can't stop myself from just being totally absent and wishing I could get away. And in certain cases, I have a much easier time articulating here to people on the internet.
To like thousands of people.
And being like really good at being open and bearing my heart and like working through tough things and being honest with myself and being like, like this is something I have a problem with and whatnot. Like I'm way more easily able to do that here for some reason than with my own family. Yeah. And so I thought about my own sister and the attempts that I have made to connect with her and with other members of my family, like my little brother, I kind of struggle with too sometimes. And it's like, I do want to, and I know what to say because I'm saying it to you guys.
So that's not the problem.
I know this stuff. I've studied it.
Right.
I have done a lot of introspection into my own life. I have done a lot of trying to unravel why do people act the way they do, and how does trauma work, and how can you meet someone where they're at and be compassionate, and all of this. I understand it all to a large extent, more than the average person, certainly. Probably not as much as an expert, obviously, but to a large degree. And yet I get in the presence of those people, and for whatever reason, something just shuts me off from accessing that ability to be able to talk freely that way. And I got Jin. I just got him all of a sudden. And I so felt his pathetic. I am pathetic that I cannot do this. What is wrong with me?
Right.
It's I don't even know how to explain it.
These are just flawed people. And some like that almost sounds like a platitude. I've heard that so many times, but like for real though, Jin is just an incredibly flawed person.
Yep.
And so is Shion. And these flawed people are so is Junior. So are all these, so is everyone here.
Yeah.
But they're all trying to like understand each other. And what you said there resonates with me a lot. I have some similar, experiences, but those helped me connect less so with Jin and more to Shion.
Shion, yeah.
And specifically more to Shion maybe in chapter 9. So we'll talk about that later.
Next
but
time.
that same kind of idea helps me to really understand, a lot of her decisions and why she thinks the way that she does, and especially towards the end of the game. So we'll bring that up again.
Yep. So anyway, I think we're going to have to leave off there.
Okay.
It's kind of a long episode, but I don't think there will be as much to go over in Chapter 8. All the Chapter 8 stuff is pretty much at the end with we get the resolution to the Junior, Albedo, Negretto, Uriel story, which is all great, and then we'll move into Chapter 9. So thanks everybody for watching. Appreciate you, as always, and we will see you next time. Peace out.